Good afternoon and welcome to We Believe Digital Studios, downtown Jackson, Mississippi, here with your twice weekly news break show from noon to 12:30. We'll start out with some stories on the Jackson end, and we make our way to the bigger world. So as early as this week, 4 temporary judges could be appointed to the Hinds County Circuit Court under the legislation referred to as House Bill 1020. U.S. District Court U.S. District Court Judge Henry Wingate read an abbreviated opinion from the bench on Wednesday, finally dismissing the Supreme Court Justice Michael Randolph from a lawsuit brought by the NAACP on behalf of Jackson residents challenging these judicial appointments. And Randolph has been unable to make the appointments because of a temporary restraining order that's been in place since May. Now that that's no longer part of the lawsuit, he can proceed with those appointments. So those are not appointments for the what Judge Wingate is referring to as a hybrid court, a new court system within the city of Jackson. This is for the existing Hinds County Circuit to add 4 temporary judges. So there's a whole lot more to this HB 1020 that's still to be decided, still to be litigated, but the Supreme Court Justice is not in the lawsuit any longer and is directed to go ahead and make these 4 appointments to the temporary appointments to the Hinds County Circuit Court. And that could happen as early as today. Jackson Water. Jackson Water recently introduced a new customer helpline. This dedicated number gives customers the ability to speak with Jackson Water at any time. So this is considered a great improvement. The call center's new number is 601-500-5200. So that's 601-500-5200. And you'll be able to connect with Jackson Water staff members that are available 24/7. They say there's 6 benefits of using the new customer service line. You can ask billing questions, you can make payments, you can manage new service, provide feedback on the quality of your water service, receive account support, and report leaks. So once again, 601-500-5200 connects you with Jackson Water 24/7. Another day has gone by with the Hinds County offices remaining closed until further notice because of a ransomware attack. Realtors were on the news programs this morning talking about trying to close properties and so forth. That's at a standstill because of this inability to look up documents and so forth. Your ability to buy or sell a home just became a lot more difficult after the hackers took over this system nearly a week ago. If you want this house, you're going to have to wait. If you want to sell this house, you're just going to have to wait, according to Toller Purvis. Another story going on in Mississippi, centered here in Jackson, is the ballot initiative. You haven't heard about, had the ability to sign off on a ballot initiative since 2021, but there's a more organized effort to get a process restored in 2024. So, remember the Supreme Court said, well, we can't really do this because the original code was set up for 5 districts, and there's really only 4 now. So obviously people were concerned about that, getting more organized, and in the thick of the campaign season, just months away from lawmakers returning to the Capitol. Ballot Access Mississippi, that's the name, is a group of citizens from around the state who are interested in restoring your right to amend our Constitution. Spence Flatguard is hoping it's a way to raise awareness and start the conversation. I've been active in different constitutional amendments, he explained. He's a chairperson of Ballot Access Mississippi, and I'll tell you, it was actually an interview on WLBT, a man on the street interview, and on the last one, the interviewer that voters said it might meant a lot to me to have the right to have my input and vote on it. And that struck a chord with me, and so that's why he's putting in his efforts to help every Mississippian get that right back. Moving on to Jackson State, the I Love University. Head coach T.C. Taylor and Jackson State have yet to play a home game. Now, that's coming up next weekend. But this weekend, they're down in Texas to face what they believe calling their toughest opponent yet for their fourth game of the season. Jackson State is 2-1. They say they've been living out of a suitcase, haven't stopped the two-time defending SWAC champions from a successful start to the year. Having the first, really 4 games away games. So, and of course they had a victory against rival Southern, making that JSU's 4th straight Boombox Classic win over the Jaguars. But they according to Coach Taylor, they've got a different animal on Saturday, hitting the road to San Marcos, Texas, to play the underdog role against NCAA Division I FBS opponent Texas State. So we're all anxious to see how that goes. Be the biggest test yet for Coach Taylor, just his 4th game at the helm of his alma mater. His Tigers are facing a team that upset the Baylor Bears in Waco the opening week of this season. So they'll be home, though, next weekend, September 23rd. Still tickets available versus Bethune-Cookman. That's a 2 p.m. game on Saturday, a week from tomorrow. Tickets still available. Retro Metro has filed a discrimination complaint in federal court against the city of Jackson, the mayor, and the Jackson City Council. Comes after the city terminated its lease with the company to house their offices at the Metro Center Mall. In July, the council voted to move all city offices out of the mall due to hazardous conditions, which included, according to them, mold, potholes, and unreliable air conditioning. Retro Metro claims the city violated the terms of the lease agreement by voting to terminate the lease. The company said it received a written notice from the city on August 11th that the city would terminate the lease. According to Retro Metro, the city has not made the agreed upon lease payments and has been delinquent since August 1st, 2023. While the process of terminating the lease agreement, the complaint stated that the city sought out and signed rental agreements to lease space from white majority-owned companies who provided the same lease space to the same city divisions and personnel that were located in the space at least from Metro Center. So they're calling that discrimination. The attorney for Metro Center, Malcolm Harrison, says, quote, "It's unacceptable to any city, much less one that is 80% African American, to take from minority-owned business and give to white-owned business. City officials have an obligation to stop discrimination, not promote it. We're asking the federal court to reinstate the city's lease agreement." In early August, Retro Metro sued the city over the termination of the release, and a trial in a separate court has been set for Monday, October 2nd. So that's it from Jackson and Hinds County, and we move on to the state news. And always beginning with today is just another day that the Republican legislature has not held any hearings on this TANF scandal, the largest fraud in the history of the state of Mississippi that anyone seems to know about. But the Republican legislature, which dominates, they have a supermajority, they're not holding any hearings on that. Can you imagine? Upwards of $100 million. The Dems have held 2 hearings so far, with more planned. A story from WLBT, an escaped Mississippi inmate now back in custody, Christopher Diaz, captured Thursday morning along Highway 61. According to the Sheriff Department, 32-year-old escaped from the Wilkinson County Community Work Center in Woodville on Wednesday. Deputies initially asked citizens to be cautious and not leave children alone at bus stops and so forth as they search for him. Diaz was originally charged with burglary and theft of a motor vehicle. And now, of course, you're going to have to add escape to those charges. So a threat of thunderstorms and traffic snarls on I-10 didn't take the shine off Tuesday's groundbreaking for the first Buc-ee's Travel Center in Mississippi, this down on the Gulf Coast. While other dignitaries wore yellow hard hats as they grabbed a shovel to turn some dirt, Buc-ee's founder, Beaver Alpin, yes, that's the name, Beaver Alpin, kept his cowboy hat on. There's almost 50 Buc-ee's Travel Centers, which are known for their long rows of gas pumps, trademark brisket sandwiches, aisles of gifts and souvenirs, and ultra-clean restrooms. This site on the Mississippi coast will be the only one between Baytown, Texas, 350 miles west, and Baldwin, Alabama, to the east when it opens in the spring of 2025. So they just had the groundbreaking. The $50 million Buc-ee's will hire hundreds of people, and Alpin said Buc-ee's is proud to offer employees a living wage. How about that? They're proud of that. This weekend at the two museums, Solidarity Now, the 1968 Poor People's Campaign exhibit. It's open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I believe Sunday is a free day. So if you're looking for some activity, the campaign exhibit for the 1968 Poor People's Campaign should be very informative. This travel exhibit explores a pivotal grassroots movement of the civil rights era, also examines the six-week protest community in Washington, D.C. that called the nation's attention to the effects of poverty on millions of Americans. And you know, it's very interesting because we just saw a report recently. I don't have today, but we'll try to remember for next Wednesday, talking about some parts of the country poverty doubling in the last year. So we need to follow up on that. From Mississippi Today, August's numbers bring the Medicaid agency's total number of disenrollments thus far to be over 68,626 people. So, you know, there was some special rules in place during the COVID, but those rules got lifted around the month of May, and ever since then, you know, those rules had allowed people to stay on the Medicaid system. And ever since then, they've been really shedding people as fast as possible. So if you can only imagine the impact that that's going to have in people's lives and on the economy and so forth. So that's it on the state on the state level, and we'll just dip out now for a couple of commercials. We'll be right back with you for the national and global segment.
Looking for the hottest content in the city of Jackson and surrounding areas? Check out WeBelieveDigital.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We Believe Digital Podcast is here for all your podcasting needs.
Hey, have you heard about the Accountable Card? It's more than a card. It's a complete mobile banking service that's accountable to all of us. You'll get a no credit check debit card good anywhere Visa is accepted to make purchases, deposits, even get or transfer cash with an FDIC insured bank account managed from our smartphone app. There's even a pre-approved no interest line of credit if you need emergency cash. So why go to the bank when you can have ours in your pocket? Get accountable. Just download our app today.
The Mississippi Link is an American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippi.link.com and click on Home Delivery.
Do you have something to say? Do you want your voice heard? Join the WeBelieve.global lineup. Be the star of your own show. For more info, call 800-492-5186, option number 1, or visit online at WeBelieve.global.
Welcome back to We Believe Digital. So glad you're joining us today. You know, we do have a call-in number, 1-800-492-5186. You can always join us in the chat. Happy to see you pop in there. On the national news front, New England is waiting on this Hurricane Lee that they've been talking about for days now, making its way. It's going to be a wide berth on the most of the east coast of the United States, but New England looks like it's going to be getting Hurricane Lee. And, you know, they usually protected from the worst of the hurricane's wrath because of that cold water that's pouring down out of the North Atlantic. So, hopefully, by the time it gets there on Saturday, they believe it would be reduced to a tropical storm. They say there's a whole bunch of numbers of factors that can affect that, but if you have any people up there, loved ones or what have you, that's what the story is up there. Another story on the national news, this Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, indicted Thursday on federal firearms charges. You know that apparently there was a plea agreement going on just a minute ago, but that all changed in about, I'd say about less than a month. Latest step in a long-running investigation. Some people have said 5 years long. They've been investigating this guy. It puts the case on track toward a possible high-stakes trial as the 2024 election looms. So you might have your answer somewhere in there as to why this is going on. Biden is accused of lying about his drug use when he bought a firearm in 2018. And he bought his firearm from a federally licensed gun store. A period when he acknowledged struggling with addiction to crack cocaine, and this was according to the indictment filed in federal court in Delaware by a special counsel overseeing the case. So we'll see what happens with that. William Nunn, twin brother of Michael Nunn and Eric Molitor, were found not guilty of providing support for a terrorist act and a weapons charge. They were the last of 14 men to face charges in state and federal court. 9 were convicted, and now 5 have been cleared. This is about that whole thing about kidnapping, attempting to kidnap or do harm to the state senator Gretchen Whitmer in Wisconsin. In northern Michigan. The key players, Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr., were already convicted of a kidnapping conspiracy last year in a different court. So many others, so many were convicted. 4 were convicted, but now 5 of the 9 that have been convicted have been cleared. From the 15th of September to the 15th of October is Hispanic History and Culture Month. And this will take center stage across the U.S. National Hispanic Heritage Month, celebrated annually. Celebration recognizes the contribution of Hispanic Americans, the fastest growing racial or ethnic minority according to the census. It includes people whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. With a U.S. population of over 63 million, there will be a plethora of Hispanic Heritage Month celebrations all over the country starting today. So you can keep your eyes and ears open for that. Wouldn't it be great to support that? We sure remember the name Elijah McClain. His fatal encounter with police is out in Colorado. You know, his fatal encounter with police began on a summer night in 2019 when a 911 caller reported that the young black man looked sketchy. 911 said a black man looked sketchy as he walked down the street wearing a ski mask, raising his hands in the air in the Denver suburbs of Aurora. We remember that name, Aurora, too, right? In reality, McClain, who was often cold, was just walking home from a convenience store listening to music. But moments later, police stopped him and after struggling with him, put the 23-year-old in a neck hold. When paramedics gave him a sedative that officials eventually determined played a key role in his death days later. McClain, a massage therapist known for his gentle nature, was unarmed and had not committed any crime. A trial for two of the officers is set to begin today with jury selection. Trials for a third officer and two paramedics are scheduled to start later this year. Hopefully we get some justice for 23-year-old Elijah McClain. Not everybody's alike. Not everybody looks alike. Not everybody acts alike. A trial challenging voting district maps in Georgia concluded Thursday with the state arguing that the court intervention on behalf of black voters isn't needed. How about that? They're feeling like black voters are treated fairly in Georgia, so they don't need to change those district maps where they pegged as many black people as possible into that one district. The plaintiffs argued that black voters are still fighting opposition from white voters and need federal help to get a fair shot. U.S. District Judge Steve Jones ruled for the challengers one of Georgia's 14 U.S. House seats, plus multiple House Senate seats could be redrawn to contain majorities of black residents. That could shift control of those seats to Democrats from Republicans. So, you get so far out there on a limb, and Georgia has such a history, like Mississippi, like Alabama. The closing arguments focused on the question of how far Georgia has come since the Voting Rights Act, whether more intervention is needed, and whether proposals brought forward by the plaintiffs are so race conscious as to be unconstitutional. One person, one vote. What a concept. How about that? Another story out of Colorado. Our old JSU coach Deion Sanders moved out to the University of Colorado at Boulder. The Buffaloes he coaching out there. They're off to an undefeated start. But his opponent for the game on tomorrow, on his coach's show Wednesday night, the coach Norvell, made a reference to Sanders' tendency to wear a hat along with sunglasses at a news conference. So what the Colorado State coach found it necessary to say, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat and my glasses off. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't. Norvell also mentioned his players had a chip on their shoulder after conducting interviews with ESPN in advance of the game dubbed the Rocky Mountain Showdown. The Rams are a 23.5-point underdog, according to FanDuel, on Saturday night against Colorado at sold-out Folsom Field. On his coach's show Wednesday, Norvell made a reference to Sanders' tendency to wear a hat along with sunglasses and said, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat off. He said, I don't care if they hear it in Boulder. I told them I took my hat and I took my glasses off. That's what my mother taught me. Now, a second dig there, if you know Deion Sanders' history. So, just a sad commentary, and this comes just a week after these Alabama fans lost to Texas in Gula and in Tuscaloosa, in Tuscaloosa, and you got Alabama fans shouting at 3 or 4 Texas players who were, celebrating with some type of little victory dance on the sideline near the end of the game, and they called them faggots and told them they need to get back to the projects they came from. So just the stuff going on, just so sad, so unjust, and so backward, wrong-headed, The CDC says everyone over the age of 6 months should get the latest booster. A federal expert panel recommended Tuesday after hearing an estimate that universal vaccine could prevent 100,000 more hospitalizations each year than if only the elderly were vaccinated. So they're not just carving out the highest risk, they're saying everybody should get it. The CDC advisory committee, they voted 13-1 for that motion after months and months of debate whether to limit the recommendation to high-risk groups. Now, just in case you're curious, after the last booster was released in 2022, only 17% of the U.S. population got it, compared with the roughly half of the nation that got the first booster when it became available in the fall of 2021. Broader uptake was hurt by pandemic weariness and evidence the shots don't always prevent COVID infections. But those who did get the shots were far less likely to get very sick or die, according to data released at this Tuesday CDC meeting. Over to Alabama for a minute. When Supreme Court considered the challenge to Alabama congressional map that shortchanged black voters, liberal justices expected the conservative majority to side with Alabama, if not gut the 1965 Voting Rights Act altogether. Instead, the Supreme Court justices emerged from their first closed-door conference meeting on the case in October 22 without a solid majority for either side. Ordinarily, the meeting is held without any law clerks or other staff present, and so forth. So it's yet to be determined how they're going to move on that Supreme Court challenge to the Alabama districts. Got just 4 stories left. We move on to the global front. First, a horrible flooding in Libya. Libyan authorities limited access to an inundated city Friday to allow searchers to dig through mud and hollowed out buildings for 10,000 people and feared dead. There's already been more than 11,000 killed, and they feel like that number is just gonna double. 2 dams collapsed in exceptionally heavy rains from the Mediterranean storm Daniel early Monday, sending a wall of water several meters high, several feet high, gushing down a valley that cuts through the city of Derna. So just a horrible situation there. Hard to imagine, maybe upwards of 20,000 people in a flooding situation. I saw one clip on the news where, literally it wasn't a minute before the water hit a little village that they actually knew what was happening or what was about to happen. Russian President Putin hosted a meeting Friday with his Belarusian ally who suggested that Minsk could join Moscow's effort to revive an old alliance with Pyongyang after this week's summit with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un. The Belarusian leader, Alexander Lukashenko, made the proposal as he met with Putin in the Black Sea resort of Sochi, where the Russian leader said he would brief him about the talks with Kim. Vladimir Zelensky from Ukraine expected to visit the White House next week and Capitol Hill. He visits the U.S. during the United Nations General Assembly meeting that will be held next week. His trip comes as Congress is debating Biden's request to provide as much as $24 billion in military and humanitarian aid for Ukraine as it fights the Russian invasion. And the last story, the Dominican Republic has done something. They're really fighting down there, disagreeing with Haitians, neighbors, Haitians. The Dominican Republic's president announced Thursday would close all borders with neighboring Haiti starting today, Friday, in a dispute over a canal on the Haitian side that would use water from a river along their frontier. So they're fighting over access to water. The president, Luis Abinader, said air, sea, and land borders would close at 6 a.m. local on Friday, would remain shuttered until necessary, signaling that last-minute talks between the countries had failed to head off the closure. It's a rare move for the Dominican Republic and could hit economies of both countries very hard, as it will most acutely be felt in Haiti. So those are our stories for today. Thank you so much for joining in. Hope you have a great weekend out there. Take care of yourselves and each other. Stay healthy. We'll see you back Wednesday at 12 noon.